So today's message I'm calling Demons and Pigs. And as I got to thinking about that, I was talking to the kids. One of the things we've watched together is the old Muppet Show episodes. And if you ever watched that, there was actually a skit in it called Pigs in Space. And Miss Piggy and other pigs. And it's just funny to us because Mikey and I were talking about the pigs coming off the cliff and falling through space. Anyway, that has nothing to do with the message. Just thought that was amusing. But before I read today's passage, I want to bring something to your attention. We're looking at an event that occurs in 3 Gospels. Now, Matthew's is the shortest, and it only differs from the other 2 in this one point. It says that there were 2 men instead of just 1 man. Now, this is one of those cases where people who want to criticize the Bible will point and say, "See, the Bible is full of errors. Mark and Luke only mention 1 man, while Matthew says there are 2. So it must be all wrong." Well, we should never be afraid of questions like this. The solution is very simple. There were 2 men. Mark and Luke just chose to focus on 1 man. Now, it's possible that he was the one who did most of the talking. It's also possible that of the 2 men freed from demons, he was the only one to obey Jesus' commands. This is actually common in Jesus' ministry. Many are healed, but few follow. But regardless, I'm going to be focusing on the narrative from Mark and Luke because the important details are the same with Matthew. Just remember that Matthew speaks of 2 people. This event occurs just hours after the immense storm that Jesus calmed had ended. And so now we're in Matthew chapter 8, verses 28 through 34, Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 20, and Luke chapter 8, verses 26 through 39. And it says, "So they arrived at the other side of the lake in the region of the Gerasenes across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus climbed out of the boat, a man possessed by demons came out from the tombs to meet him. For a long time he had been homeless and naked, living in the burial caves outside the town, and could no longer be restrained. Even with a chain, this spirit had often taken control of the man. Whenever he was put into chains and shackles, as he often was, he snapped the chains from his wrists and smashed the shackles. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Day and night he wandered among the burial caves and in the hills, howling and cutting himself with sharp stones. While Jesus was still some distance away, the man saw him, ran to meet him, and bowed low before him. With a shriek, he screamed, 'Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In the name of God, please, I beg you, don't torture me.' For Jesus had already said to the spirit, 'Come out of the man, you evil spirit.' Then Jesus demanded, 'What is your name?' And he replied, 'My name is Legion, because there are many of us inside this man.' Then the demons begged him again and again not to send them into the bottomless pit. There happened to be a large herd of pigs feeding on the hillside nearby. 'Send us into those pigs,' the demons begged. 'Let us enter them.' So Jesus gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the entire herd of about 2,000 pigs plunged down the steep hillside into the lake and drowned in the water. When the herdsmen saw it, they fled into the nearby town and surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. People rushed out to see what had happened. A crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons. He was sitting there at Jesus' feet, fully clothed and perfectly sane, and they were all afraid. Then those peoples who had seen what had happened told the others about the demon-possessed man and the pigs and how he had been healed. And all the people in the region of the Gerasenes begged Jesus to go away and leave them alone, for a great wave of fear swept over them. So Jesus returned to the boat and left, crossing back to the other side of the lake. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been freed from the demons begged to go with him. But Jesus said, "No, go home to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been." So the man started off to visit the 10 towns of that region and began to proclaim the great things Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed at what he told them. So let's talk about the location. As I mentioned in the last sermon, this area was in the Decapolis, which was a group of 10 Greek towns. These were not Jews living here, but people who were from other nations who worshipped other gods. Based on the description in the Bible, this may have been near a town called Susita, which you can visit today. It has been excavated. There are caves nearby where people could have been buried, and there's a steep hillside leading directly into the water. Now, I want to talk about the local religion, because fairly recently a temple to Dionysus was excavated in the region. Dionysus is a Greek god commonly identified with the drinking of wine, but the worship of Dionysus involved people releasing all their inner inhibitions and just doing whatever they wanted. There are stories of virgins who would go into a frenzy and tear animals apart with their bare hands. Massive alcohol consumption and sex were involved in the worship of Dionysus, as well as the sacrificing of pigs. This explains the presence of such a large group of pigs in the region. 2,000 pigs is a lot of pigs. It also may partially explain the reaction of the people. See, these men, it says, were possessed by many demons. Legion, they called themselves. It's more than likely that based on their supernatural strength and frenzy, that the people viewed these men as oracles or mouthpieces for Dionysus. We see this throughout Greek religion. Many temples had an oracle to the god they worshipped, like the oracle at Delphi. So when Jesus casts out these demons and changes the lives of these men, he's actually displaying his power over their chosen God. Terror indeed. And then we see this miracle. So imagine the scene. Jesus and his young disciples have just come through the storm. They may still be a little shaken. Of course, they were terrified of Jesus. And they pull into the dock, and immediately these two filthy, naked men with wild hair come screaming out of the caves. Ah, Jesus! Down the hill. And you can imagine that the disciples were climbing over each other to try to get back into the boat. Excuse me. So even though the disciples and Pharisees didn't yet realize who Jesus is, these demons do. It says they actually shrieked, "Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In the name of God, please, I beg you, don't torture me." So Jesus has this conversation with them. What is your name? And they say, "My name is Legion," because there are many of us inside this man. And of course, there were two men, so these men. Then the demons begged him again and again not to send them into the bottomless pit. Now, the bottomless pit is hell, the place where God made to send Satan and his demons at the end of time. Now, I don't know if getting sent there meant that they could never leave again, or if it was just difficult to get out, or I don't know. I don't know what they meant. But regardless, they were scared of going there. And so they say, "Send us into these pigs. Let us enter them." Now, what Jesus did next was not an act of mercy. He actually had a purpose behind it. Why did the demons want to go into the pigs? Well, if they inhabited the pigs, then they would have the opportunity to possess another poor worshiper of Dionysus when that pig was sacrificed. And so 2,000 pigs rushed to their death. You just imagine the scene. You got these herdsmen. The demons enter the pigs go crazy and immediately start running down the hill to kill themselves because they understand that this evil in them, they just can't stand it. But I want you to imagine what it was like for these two men. What this means is that there were at least 2,000 demons inhabiting these two men. What horror they must have lived in. But this is the result. The people of the region came, and it says that great fear swept over them. They saw the two men sitting there with clothes on, talking sanely. I imagine they had taken a bath at this point and cleaned themselves. They just looked like everyone else. And I think the fear of the crowd is partially because of what I mentioned earlier about the oracle thing, but also the loss of 2,000 pigs would have been a tremendous financial loss for these people. The reality of the one true God terrified them, and they just wanted him to leave. At least one of the demon-possessed men, though, has a different reaction. As Jesus is getting back in the boat, the man begs to go with Jesus, but Jesus has a different mission for him. He tells the man to go home and tell everyone what God had done for him. And the man does this, and Jesus leaves. Now, there's two major things I want you to see here. Two amazing messages that we can apply to our lives. First, Jesus will only work in your life if you allow him. He did this amazing miracle in the presence of these people, but because it fell outside their expectations and experiences, it terrified them, and they asked Jesus to leave. So he did. What a terrible thing to happen. But it happens all the time. Sometimes it happens in the lives of pagans who have never known Jesus. They're given an opportunity to follow him, and they reject it because it doesn't fit what they want. This is one reason, I was trained in evangelism stuff, and one of the things I was trained to do was to ask people, why don't you just try Jesus out for a while? But this is a reason I have stopped asking people to try following Jesus for a while. The truth is, following Jesus is so outside the realm of what we know as sinful people that it will always disappoint us and terrify us at some point. If we're not all in, we will ask him to leave eventually. Sometimes, though, it happens inside churches. Jesus starts doing amazing things that are outside the expectations, experiences, and desires of the people in the building, and so they ask Jesus to leave by stopping what Jesus is doing. As I mentioned in the last sermon, following Jesus will always make you uncomfortable. He will take you places you never wanted to go, in ways you would never choose to travel, in order to reach people you would never want to reach. These people will look at these opportunities and turn away from it. I have often said that if I had known back in 2007 when I joined the military to serve God as a military chaplain, if I had known what that was going to mean for my family over the intervening years, I'm not sure that I would have done it. If Jesus had said, hey Josh, here's all the difficult stuff that's going to happen and all the pain you're going to go through, and you're going to be able to do ministry through that stuff, but it's going to be really hard sometimes. In fact, a lot of the time. I might have said, that's okay. I'm not in for that. But because I am a dedicated follower of Jesus, it doesn't matter what pain comes into my life. I'm going to follow him no matter what. And he doesn't have to tell me all of what's going to happen because I trust him in the end. So my call to you is not to turn away. Rather than running from the discomfort, embrace what Jesus is leading you to. Let him break down your preconceptions. Let him show you a new way. Let him use you in a way you have never expected. I cannot tell you how amazing it is in the middle of incredibly difficult circumstances to have God speak to you directly through his word, to see God work amazingly in ways that you never expected. But it will never happen if you don't let Jesus in and follow Jesus. Second, I want you to look at the man who was freed from the demons. When Jesus left, how much did this man know? Well, very little. He had sat with Jesus for a few hours while word spread of what had happened. He knew that Jesus had freed him, and he knew Jesus was the one true God. But that's it. He had no good knowledge of the Torah. He didn't know God's commands. He didn't know about the creation of the world or the flood or the Exodus. He didn't know about Noah and Abraham and Moses and Joshua and Daniel. He didn't know about the prophecies for the Messiah. He knew almost nothing. But Jesus calls this hours-old follower to be his only messenger in the Decapolis. In the church, we often look at new believers and we think, well, they need to be trained before they go. They need to mature in their faith before they can accomplish God's commands. They aren't ready now. We look at teenagers and we say they're too young, or children. They're the church of tomorrow. But right now, we don't want to ask anything of them. They're too young. They're too immature. But clearly, that is not Jesus' attitude. And this is the result. Several weeks later, Jesus comes back through this area. But this time, huge crowds come out to meet him. They want healing. They want to hear him teach. They have gone from begging Jesus to leave to being delighted that he is there. In weeks, what changed? One man. One man faithfully telling the people the only thing he knew about Jesus. I was possessed by demons and this man came and freed me. I am sane and with my family because of him. He is God. I'm following him now and I want you to follow him as well. Can you imagine the delight of the man as Jesus comes into the area? Can you imagine him running up to Jesus? Jesus, you told me to tell everyone, and look around you. I've done what you said. Here they all are. They believe in you and they want to come hear you. What an amazing thing for that man. Today I went to a church led by a pastor who is half my age. Now I've been doing ministry longer than he's been alive. He's only been a follower of Jesus for a handful of years. And yet God has used him to do more in 2 years in that church than many churches in this area have done in decades. And truthfully, God has used him to do more for the kingdom of God than I feel like I've done in all my years of ministry put together. I'm not jealous. I'm actually humbled to see God work so mightily through one so new, and it motivates me to want to follow Jesus even more. So if you are new to the faith, or if you think you don't know enough, don't let that stop you. Do what Jesus has laid on your heart and watch him bless it. Don't let people tell you that you can't do it. Don't let people tell you you're not good enough. Go and do it. And if you've been following Jesus for a while, be like Jesus. Free people from their demons. Set people free to do the ministry that God has called them to do. Now, God also calls us to help equip people as older believers, as more mature believers. So do that as well. Partner with people, but don't shackle them to your ideas of what religion looks like. And let's all go like that man, freed from demons, and let's go set other people free. Amen.